Ohio State has its hands on the steering wheel once again in the Big Ten race. It was barreling towards the crossroads, Berm. That's what Ryan Day said, and it decided to turn right back into contender lane. They win 20-13 right here at Beaver Stadium. Largest crowd in this building ever watches Penn State fall yet again to the Buckeyes in enormous win for Ohio State to kick off November. I'm Austin Ward. He's Jeremy Birmingham. These are Snap Judgments. That was something.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The entire week we said, I have no idea what to expect, right? And then the game somehow played out exactly like you'd expect it to when Ohio State and Penn State play. It was huge emotion swings. It was unforced errors. It was forced errors. It was moments where the offensive line and defensive line seemed overwhelmed, and then moments where they kicked Penn State's ass. So it's like it was a weird combination of things, but you know, we talked about it on the pregame keys. We fully expected Penn State to come out and throw a punch early.
Yep.
I don't think anybody in this building or anybody in the Ohio State sideline would have anticipated it come in the way of a terrible pick six from Will Howard on Ohio State's opening drive. But that next drive for the Buckeyes, where you just march down the field, calm, collected, little swing passes out to Quinshon Judkins, little pitches, the misdirection, the touchdown to Emeka Egbuka. From that moment on, Penn State seemed like, okay, we don't really know what to do here. Obviously, Penn State does not score an offensive touchdown. We're going to get into the details of what happened twice inside of the 5 for the Nittany Lions at the end of each half. But there's going to be a lot of time to dissect the areas where Ohio State still needs to have some questions answered. But this is a great win for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. I'm not going to buy into the discussion that, well, it's just Penn State. Okay, this is the number 3 team in the country. They were undefeated. It's in front of an incredible crowd, 111,000. You come in, you leave with the W, and now you get a return game at home against Purdue. And as you said, hands on the wheel now for the Buckeyes. Everything on the table is still in front of them.
Well, I mean, if the last 3 weeks have been about Ryan Day's record against top 10 opponents, and this is on the road, this is a very good Penn State team. Is it a great Penn State team, like a national title contender? No, I don't believe that that's true. But I'm not saying anything to diminish the importance of what they did. That is a really good defense against a shorthanded Ohio State offense that had to scheme up a ton of things to get it moving, which they did do. Again, there are a lot of things that we could nitpick, because that could have turned this into a blowout instead of a 7-point game, because Ohio State's defense absolutely met the moment. They got pressure from the front when they had to. On every single down? No. When they needed to get stops, they did. They got off the field when they gave up yardage with red zone and goal line stands. They got a critical takeaway with Davis Igbinosun with a little twofer and a red zone stop goal line stand with a remarkable interception. Emeka Egbuka on a misdirection throwback. Brandon Ennis getting involved on offense. There was opportunities for Ohio State to win this game by more, but that doesn't mean that it matters that they could have or should have or would have. They had to win by 1 point in a very difficult place to play, and they did.
They won by 700 times that. 700% more. Not 700 times.
I don't think. See, this isn't a math show. You tried to get cute.
700%. Yeah. I'm not good at math. I just think there was a moment here for Ohio State where they could have said, oh no, here we go again.
It happened right away, right here.
I mean, not just that, but they go for it on a huge 4th down at midfield, get it on a remarkable play to Jelani Thurman, who's bobbling the ball all over the place.
Will Howard has to improvise.
Will Howard had to improvise. The play was blown up by Penn State. The Buckeyes get it. 2 plays later, Will Howard is walking into the end zone for what would be, at that point, a game-ending touchdown, because Penn State was done if Ohio State scores there.
Yeah.
And the ball gets knocked out, he steps out of bounds. If the ball hits him on the inside of his knee instead of directly on the thigh, it probably goes out of bounds.
Or if he steps out of bounds at the 2.
So there's moments where Ohio State could have been, oh no, and there's going to be time to pick nits about pick nitnies about the way things went, because I think Ohio State left points on the board and opportunities on the board other than just that the fumble by Will Howard. But you can't be anything but happy about getting out of here with the win. I'm telling you, folks, to have to go to Eugene, Oregon and play the Ducks out there, and then 3 weeks later have to be here, to have to play in these 2 environments in 2 out of 3 games is really difficult. And no one in the country is going to have to experience that.
And that's with two different versions of Ohio State. I don't think that part should be overlooked. The team that went out to Eugene compared to the one that played in this stadium today, they're very different physically and mentally. Physically, because they don't have their best offensive lineman. So they had to work around that. They kicked Donovan Jackson out to left tackle. Carson Hinsman made his return to the lineup. He played at left guard. I thought the offensive line did enough in a tough situation, especially with what they did to cap the game in the 4-minute, 5-minute drill to run the clock out on Penn State. So that's different. Will Kazmarek gets hurt. You have your best all-around blocking tight end, and who had made a big reception on the first drive of that game. Your Lathan Ransom is coming back, banged up, gritting his way through that. I don't know if he was at 100%, but he didn't put Ohio State in any jeopardy, and they trusted him to play in all 4 quarters of this game. But they had also been punched in the mouth. So mentally, their backs against the wall. They've taken criticism. All we can do is say that we've been critical of this team for the last week based on their performance more against Nebraska than what happened against Oregon, but they're aware of that. Plus, they're down 10 points, so they're challenged mentally. They're stretched thin physically, and they're playing a good opponent. Like, there are all, as you mentioned, there are all sorts of opportunities for Ohio State to have folded and said, you know what, that's it. But they did not do that. They didn't even come close to that.
No, and we'll see where this takes them. I think that's a big question because this team needed a win in this type of environment against a top 5 team really freaking bad. And, you know, Ryan Day, I didn't hear much about in the post-game press conference because we're at Penn State and their broom closet had too many brooms in it. So he couldn't hear. But I did hear him say Will Howard had a look in his eye all week and he was not going to let Ohio State lose this game. And the confidence that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day showed in Will Howard in that 5-minute drive to end the game, twice on 3rd and 2 to just say, go get it, Will. I mean, it was the JT Barrett offense, QB power, just QB power left both times. And like, that's the first time this year where I've seen Will Howard run. And I'm like, damn, like that guy.
Well, how about the quarterback sneak, man? I mean, that was.
Well, he did the same thing against Nebraska a week ago. And they gave him the ball. I think they only gave him like 3 yards and he got like 7 on the quarterback sneak against Nebraska. So like what you're saying, like this is an evolving team. We're heading into November. The weather's going to start to change. Today was perfect. I mean, unbelievably perfect weather for football. But now you add this element of Will Howard and starting to get maybe some confidence in him keeping the rock, and that can change things too. So we could go player by player and talk about the guys that showed up and made plays, but
it'd be a long list.
I think first and foremost, and we talked about it on Road Breaks, but you know, if Carson Hinsman was going to be the guy, like good. Because no one else made sense as far as a guy that started 12 games coming into this atmosphere. He should be ready. And he played his ass off. And I thought he deserves a lot of credit for, you know, probably is not going to grade out perfect. And PFF will probably say he stunk. But, like, he did a pretty good job for a kid put in that position. And I saw him coming off the field, and you could tell, like, he looked like he weighed 300 pounds lighter than he normally does.
I really would like to know more about, because Carson Hinsman carried momentum out of summer. He was an Iron Buckeye, and we thought, well, this could be a legitimate, maybe not battle, but at least conversation about who should play center and who should play guard between he and Seth McLaughlin. It's like, well, he's going to find a role in some form or fashion. The way that everyone is talking about him, and he was part of that group that was sick to start training camp. I don't know how much that impacted, derailed some of the progress that he was feeling. I wouldn't begin to speculate on it. I would like to know more about it because Austin Serveld had seemingly leapfrogged him. We saw Tegra Shabola jumping out there. Both of those guys have been playing extensively at guard, and it wasn't like, well, I wonder what they need after heading into November. Oh, a guy who started 12 games last year is still available, and like, why had that not happened? Doesn't really matter, but I think it would provide some.
That's a question I'm sure we're going to. I think that's a question that's going to be asked on Tuesday when we get back to Columbus, because, yeah, that's not a knock on Tegra Shabola or Austin Serveld, who played very well.
I don't mean it to be one. I just thought he was going to. I thought
but he was there, and the conversation all spring or all summer was him or Tegra Shabola at left guard, and then he just disappeared for the first 8 weeks of the season.
Right.
And now you get a week to prepare for this environment and this Penn State defense and this Penn State pass rush, and you put him out there clearly because you had confidence in him. So where was that earlier? you know, I mean, hindsight 2020 doesn't matter. I mean, he came out and he played really well. Now he's got to carry on that. You know, he's got to grow from that. But it's hard to be anything but like relieved. Is relieved the word? Like to get out of here with the win, because you could have won this game 34-3, 34-6. Could have lost it. So like it's such a wild swing, because I think you could scheme out this game and see it go either way. Penn State was not going to blow out Ohio State. Ohio State could have blown them out today and didn't. So I think they're still like, hey, this is still not this team playing its best game. But the defense, all we've asked, somebody make a play when you need to make a play, right? And Davison Igbinosun made a huge play when he needed to make a play.
I think I land right here, Berm, which is this was not the best Ohio State could play, but that was the toughest that we've seen them play in a long time. And that wins you games. If we were looking for some of that, like, it would be great if they executed every single play that was drawn up and Chip Kelly and Ryan Day could do whatever they wanted and Jim Knowles, every blitz he calls gets home. Like, that's not reality. And when things go wonky, you are going to have to, like, Caleb Downs made some of the most ridiculous one-handed tackles that I've ever seen in my life. Be a tough dude. Travion Henderson standing in there to help in blitz protection, letting people just come at him and put him in the ground. Donovan Jackson put Carter in the ground on one of those plays. Like, be a tough dude. Play with that attitude. I thought that was like, you can have a bad outing, which is what they had against Nebraska, but you still want to see energy and passion and intensity from the team, especially if you're saying you are an angry football team and you want to prove it. Yeah. Like, that's what we saw today. I wasn't sure when they walked in if that was going to happen.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were timid or focused when they walked into the building. I think it looked like it could have been either, which is, again, I think the tale of this game, because it could have legitimately been a 34-6 Ohio State win or a 20-17 loss. I mean, the play by Davison Igbinosun at the end of the half, you got to understand, Ohio State gets the ball with 3 minutes to go in the first half, up 14-10, getting the ball to start the second half. If Ohio State goes down and kicks a field goal there and then comes out with a 17-10 lead, puts up points on the board in the first drive of the second half like they did, this game's over.
Right.
And the Buckeyes, this is where, like, but again, for picking a nit here, like, I thought they were way too conservative on that drive. Give Penn State the ball back at midfield, which you kind of know is going to happen because you know your punter is not a field flipper.
He actually hit some pretty big ones.
His third quarter punt
actually outkicked the coverage.
He outkicked the coverage for the first time all year. But then for Davison Igbinosun, after getting a PI call on a play where the receiver makes a ridiculous catch anyway, to come back 2 plays later and make that interception, like, that's what we've been waiting for from this Ohio State defense all year. Someone to just say, you know what, not gonna happen. That's what Zach Bourne was talking about on Monday on the Blitz when he was referencing Christian Bryant against Penn State in this building.
Yep.
Someone saying, hey, no, it's not gonna happen against me again. And Caleb Downs, I mean, I don't know what else you can say about him. He's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. I do think that it comes back to, you said you were just outside of the room. Like, the fact that Ryan Day, he's the head coach. He doesn't want to address criticism head on. The only thing that matters is what goes on between these lines. But for him to acknowledge that everyone was aware of the conversation of the team, certainly they can't pretend like it doesn't exist. Like, they're in it, and they have higher standards than anyone from outside the Woody could possibly ever hold them to. But for him to say, and he was not talking specifically about himself. That wasn't the way that the answer was phrased. But he said the program was at a crossroads. That includes him at the top. Yeah. So it doesn't mean, and we mentioned this on Friday night, that if they had not won this game, that the program was going to have to start completely over with new head coach, new coaching staff, new everything. There still would have been something for this team to play for. They could have lost here and still gotten the playoff. We don't have to have that conversation anymore. And you don't have to have a conversation about Ryan Day's record in games against top 5 opponents or games on the road. And just because Penn State might fall out of the top 5 doesn't mean that this win should carry any less weight. This is a pivotal performance in Ryan Day's career.
It is the duality of man, honestly. Like, Ryan Day acknowledging, like, they're at that crossroads, which, again, is difficult for a coach to just contend with. there's a scenario here. I'm not going to say there's a world.
In a world
where Ohio State lost this game, they still could have made the playoff, as you said. But there's another world where Ohio State lost this game and players quit.
Yep.
And say, you know what, screw it, I'm done. I'm not going to keep doing this. We're never going to get over the hump. So like, there is that world that exists where you could see how this could have gone either way. And now, the important thing is like, yeah, good job, celebrate, get home, everybody enjoy themselves tonight. But like, Purdue is next week,
yeah,
and then there's Indiana. So like,
don't you forget about the baseball trip.
Northwestern. So we
have to see if this team can win a baseball game.
Let me say this: there are questions to be asked and answered about this team still, and that's going to happen throughout this week, starting on a Monday. I'm sure when we get to Roosters for the live show.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Zach Bourne will have plenty of thoughts on the Monday morning podcast daily. But
I think he will.
The next 2 weeks provide an opportunity to figure some stuff out before that Indiana game on the 23rd of November. So like, you have an opportunity to get things sorted. And I thought the offensive line took a huge step today. The defensive line, I was confused a little bit by like Penn State's first drive of the game. They have a 3rd and 1 and 4, and JT Tuimoloau comes off the field for Kenyatta Jackson on a 3rd and 1, which you're like, that's not where I would normally do that. Drew Aller runs right up the middle for a first down. Next play, Kenyatta Jackson still on the field. Drew Aller runs up the middle for 15 yards. So, like, there's things where we're going to be like, what does that mean moving forward? But kudos to Larry Johnson, his guys, as you said, like they made plays in the third quarter, especially when they needed to. Caden Curry was on the field more. Edric Houston, Caden McDonald with a couple big plays in the middle. Like, you got time now to figure out how all these new pieces work together because all these guys have to play.
You're going to hear from some of those guys that you mentioned on the Notebook, which will be coming to the podcast YouTube channel later on as well. We got Ryan Day coming straight out of that room as well. Talk to him about some of that criticism and the crossroads moment, so you can hear directly from him on that if you want to hang around and watch the Notebook, which I hope you do. But I'll give you a little bit of a warning. It's a strange one. It was chaotic, as the whole afternoon was at Beaver Stadium. But the Buckeyes came out on top. They're 2013 winners. They are back controlling their destiny in the Big Ten championship race, college football playoff race. The game is the game. They already had some control over that, but the rest they have got back in their hands. Thanks for joining us for Snap Judgments. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.